Well, gentlemen, this is becoming a bit of a regular occurrence. I'm delighted to confirm today that Walter Smith will be the new manager of Rangers Football Club. There was never any doubt of Walter being the manager, and he was in fact appointed the manager within minutes of Graham's departure. There was never an alternative choice. The man has got a wonderful pedigree in football, and he's been waiting for this opportunity, and being a Rangers man at heart, we wish him every success from everyone involved with the club, and hope that he brings us on to greater glory and future trophies, including this year's championship. Walter.
I'm obviously delighted at the opportunity that I've been given. I've worked for a number of years under two of the best managers in Scotland, and when I got the opportunity I was only too delighted to take it. I've been a supporter of Rangers for a great number of years now, and it's obviously a great honour for me to accept the position and hope that I can take the club to the success that they deserve.
You all seem to expect something else. No questions.
Congratulations, Walter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think every team needs a driving force. To think that when you're sitting in that office, as you look around, that your portrait's up there along with the rest of them, it's a great thing. Yes, it is only a game. It's a great game. Any manager's personality is very difficult to take, but in the end of the day, you've got to be yourself. Right, ready. And how continuing until what year? Till the end? Thank you. A brief stop now and again. Allow the memory to...
If you meet a few people like that in your life, you're blessed.
A decent human being who was a great football manager and a great family man.
He was a very good human being who I'm sure will be missed by millions.
I was just happy to have been a friend of his for all these years.
You have to be special to do that, and I think it was special.
Walter Ferguson Smith was born on the 24th of February 1948 and grew up in the Glasgow suburb of Carmyle.
He's coming from a football home. His maternal grandfather is a great Rangers man. And at bedtime, young Walter is sitting in his grandpa's lap hearing stories of Waddle and Meikle-John and Johnny Hubbard. The grandfather goes on to be the founding member of Carmyle Rangers Supporters Club. Walter goes and watches Rangers when he can, when he's not playing football.
Walter played football as a youngster, went on to play amateur football and junior football. That's a school of hard knocks, as people are fond of saying. It's a game where you can't be a frail character, let's put it that way.
And I think it was a similar journey to most. I went to play for Ashfield. I was there 3 or 4 months, and then signed for Dundee United in, I think, November 1966. It was a normal route into professional football, if you like, at that time.
After leaving Ashfield FC in Glasgow, Walter would spend most of his playing career at Dundee United.
I played against him actually.
I scored against him. I kept reminding him that for 35 years. He originally was a midfield player and then converted to a centre-back for a while, you know. Not great pace. And I think, you know, obviously when you see him score that goal against Dundee.
Henry. That's it.
Kisses the boot.
Number 6, Walter Smith.
That was the pinnacle of his career.
Look, he's taking that so well. And
He was a good player, strong player, intelligent player.
number 6, Walter Smith, well up for that.
Not elite by any manner of means, but obviously one of these players, when you watch him play, you were thinking to yourself, you know, he's quite smart in his movement, he's quite smart thinking about the game.
Jim McLean was a legendary manager of Dundee United. Walter already had an interest in coaching, something that McLean would eventually come to rely on.
When I went full-time, I had a kind of interest in training and, you know, what goes on in the background. A friend of mine, Jimmy Cameron, who was at Ashfield with me and came to Dundee United at the same time, we used to sit down and talk about, you know, different aspects of training and football, and I found I was always interested. Then I took a pelvic injury, and at the end of the injury, I'd been helping Jim do little bits of training. And he said to me, look, I think you're going to have to face, we've got some younger players coming in. Your football's not that great, and but you look as though you might have a future in coaching, so would you like to become a player coach?
Jim, was, to my mind, was probably the best coach Scotland ever produced. A fantastic coach, but he wasn't the best at dealing with players.
Hey, Wilson! Come on, ball!
And Walter was a great buffer to him.
Watch you don't catch me smiling now.
He helped Jim McLean in so many ways, as he helped a lot of managers as he went up the ladder.
Jim McLean's ambitions for United were realised in 1983, when his side won the Premier Division title for the first time. And his number 2 played a crucial role in the club's success.
I think we Jim had seen that what he could coach, fantastic coach. You know, what he could go in amongst the first team players and naturally take them, and what he was the man who picked the team, decided the tactics and got us playing.
It was a fantastic period to be involved in. I couldn't have had a better grounding than I got from Jim McLean.
His coaching skills were recognised elsewhere because Andy Roxburgh, who was handling the Scotland youths at that point, asked him to assist. So Walter was involved when the Scottish under-18s won the European Championship. We went on to coach the under-21s. And in my view, his coaching ability was being noticed well beyond Tannadice.
Success at Dundee United under Jim McLean established Walter Smith as a gifted first-team coach. Positions with the national side followed, but Walter began to gravitate towards one club in particular. When Graham Souness arrived at Rangers in 1986, he'd long known who he wanted to be his assistant.
Graham Souness had asked me at a Scotland gathering, actually, in February, if I would like to join him, which obviously, from my background as a supporter and as a boy, I was delighted to do.
In the early days, you know, I was still a player. I was still in the dressing room. I had to have someone who knew about Scottish football, and Walter just fitted the bill perfectly.
Souness brought big money, glamour and success to Rangers and the Scottish game. But with that passion and drive came a fractious relationship with the media and the SFA.
Graham Souness had hit, you know, the Scottish football scene like a meteor. The place just exploded. He was fodder for the front pages of papers. His life became very, very difficult.
At this point, I've got nothing to say, thank you.
And I think he would look back now and say he should have stood back for a while.
Once again, Walter enjoyed success in his role as assistant manager, this time with Rangers. But after winning 6 domestic trophies with Souness, everything was about to change.
I feel that now would be the best time for me to go.
I was left in a circumstance where I had no prospects there other than at the hands of Sir David Murray, who had obviously the ultimate decision on who replaced Graham.
And I did recommend to David, if, there's no one better, he knows the club. We've got a really healthy squad there. Given he was a Glasgow boy, he was, chance to manage his team we grew up supporting.
David Murray more or less told me that Walter Smith would be the manager. He was just confirming with me as the captain of the club if the players would be on board with that. And I confirmed that decision as well, that the players would be on board with that.
Walter, having worked with Graham, knew what the expectation was. And it's a big word, but it's a great word because that's exactly what Rangers Football Club was at the time. Expectation. He knew that winning was the name of the game. So taking over for Graham was the correct, absolute 100% correct decision by David Murray.
Walter always had a gravitas about him, I felt. If you looked about him, he had experience with Alex Ferguson, with Jim McLean. I wouldn't say done his apprenticeship, that's unfair to Walter, but he was ready to be his own man.
Walter suddenly found himself in a position of extreme exposure because the totem for Rangers, this totemic manager, had gone, and suddenly the assistant is thrust into the limelight. Nobody knows if he can carry this off or not.
4 matches remained of the season. If Rangers secured 3 wins, Walter would only need a draw in the final game to guarantee the league title.
There's Robertson. Yes, he scored for Rangers! Headed away there by Clark, there's the header and the breakthrough at last.
Walter had won his first 2 crucial games in charge, but had yet to appoint his assistant. His preferred choice was an old friend from Dundee United, but Archie Knox was already working for someone else.
He stole my blinking assistant, robbed me.
That was a tricky move, I've got to say.
Walter phoned me. He says, I've offered Archie the job.
Obviously it took a little bit of time to negotiate the whole thing, but whenever he came on to me, I'm saying to myself, well, do I or do I not? And the lure was just too much at the end of the day.
You want to make sure you're best equipped to take on a job like that. The magnitude of managing Rangers is huge, but it was definitely the right decision for both of them.
Driven forward! Dougie Arnott! Oh, he scored! A tremendous goal! Chris Wood's committing himself! And he scored! It's 3-0 to Motherwell!
Of course, I'm going into Ibrox on the Monday morning, and they were working on the top deck of the stand at that particular time. And the workmen were down in there, and one of them shouted up to me, "Hey Knox, you've made a big difference, haven't you?" I says, "Well, fair enough, long way to go."
Everything hung on the last game of the season against fellow title challengers Aberdeen. Rangers needed a win.
Remember, Aberdeen only had to draw that day to win the title, and it was also crucial to Walter's longevity at the club.
Going for the early cross, there's Haitley! It's a magnificent goal for Rangers!
It was a major thing for Walter not to have won that league. Would have put him under bigger pressure. Winning that one on his own then was a major thing for him.
There it is! Rangers have won the championship!
So it could have backfired, but Walter steered the ship through to win a successful league campaign.
As soon as the season was over, Walter faced a problem. A new UEFA rule limited the number of foreign players, and he was forced to rebuild his team.
There was a complete revamp of the staff required. But as it turned out, you know, when I look back on it, it was probably the best thing that happened to me. You know, as a new manager taking over, we had to lose a lot of our English players, and we had to bring in a lot of lads in Scotland who I had known for, you know, a number of years. So there was a change in the playing staff at that time. It caused us a little bit of a problem initially. After that, we settled down and had a fantastic run. They were a terrific team, very difficult team to overcome. And in Mark Haitley and Ali McCoist, we had two players who, you know, I don't think we could have searched Europe and got better.
Walter knew it himself. He was blessed with very good players during the period.
I think Walter Smith is going about his job in a very quiet and a very effective manner. And all I can do is thank him and Archie for giving me the chance. And I like to think I've repaid him by scoring 1 or 2 goals for him.
He brought a stability, you know, to young players, people coming to the club, and the people around him, his staff.
With a fresh squad, Walter's first full season in charge brought a league and cup double. The following season, Rangers won the treble and went on a memorable run in the restructured Champions League. It would bring a tantalising Battle of Britain encounter against the Leeds side at the height of their success.
You know, you were playing against the champions of England, we were the champions of Scotland, so that was a motivation in itself.
They had a really terrific team at that particular Leeds team. Big names.
Because you had this tempest of noise and silenced by the Gary McAllister goal, and then completely coming back into a wave of noise. The Rangers really came back and won.
Rangers may have won at home, but their English opponents were favourites to win at Elland Road.
After the first game, we were only 2-1 up, and I think a lot of people thought that wasn't going to be enough. Bearing in mind, Leeds were probably the best midfield I'd come up against.
And I can remember the morning of the game, there was a lot of headlines. It was, oh, it's just another Scottish kid team coming down there.
It wasn't just taken for granted, it was an article of faith among the English football writers, almost to a man, because there were no women at that point, that Rangers were going to lose, and probably lose quite badly.
Walter and Archie Knox did put those headlines up on the, you know, on the noteboard.
Then Rangers do to Leeds United what Leeds United did to them. It was Mark Haitley, and he told me at the time it was a ploy they had called the BFG, and he said to me, that's not the big friendly giant, it's the boot flick goal. Andy boots it out, somebody flicks it on, I get under it and have a shot. It worked perfectly.
McCoist on the far side. Gary Speed is racing back to provide the cover. Here's Ali McCoist. Oh, he's done it!
So we win the game. I think Sir Alex is the first one in the dressing room afterwards, going round every player, you know, congratulating us.
They had a great performance, so we felt it was our duty to go in and join in the sing-song.
They didn't go on to win the European Cup, but the fact remains they did the country proud.
In just 2 seasons, Walter had secured a domestic treble, seen off the champions of England, and mounted a strong challenge in Europe. But to further his ambitions of becoming a major force in European football, he would need to attract the best players in the game to Glasgow.
Played a lot of games over a 3-year period, and we were starting to need a little bit of a change in our playing staff.
I always looked for the 2 signings to come in and improve us, because that's where we needed improvement all the time. And it was a jolt of energy for the other players when you got better players coming to join you. But boys like Gascoigne and Laudrup coming to the club, you know, it was a step up. And not only that, the 2 boys that came in, they were 2 good characters as well. Laudrup was a fantastic player and a great man.
He was much more than a manager. I could sense that already. For me, he didn't only see the player, he saw the human being. He was very interested in hearing my story about my family, whether I had kids and stuff like that. So I sensed from that moment that for him and for me, the chemistry was there.
Gascoigne was a different kettle of fish. But like I said, that's when Walter's man management came into, you know, he knew how to handle Gascoigne as best I think anyone did.
And that was exactly Walter's greatest gift, because a guy like Paul would need an arm around him at times, you know, trying to show him his path, and Walter would give him that. We had so much fun off the park as well, and you know, we went out, the players together, sometimes a lot of the players, sometimes just a few. That was what Walter wanted. He wanted that commitment to each other, that if you know each other off the park, you will run that extra yard for each other on it. And I had never experienced that at a club, anywhere where I've played. But at Rangers, it was certainly, I think, perhaps that was the secret behind the success.
Walter was now firmly established as a successful manager who could handle the biggest personalities in the game. And increasingly, had little time for annoying questions from cheeky journalists.
I'm dispatched or volunteered to go to Ibrox to try and get an interview. There's no press conferences these days. With Walter, he was in a foul mood.
We spent £5 million, Walter, in the summer on good players, but these players seemingly are not good enough at the highest level in Europe.
I don't think you can say that. I mean, how can you say that? I mean, they've just came into place, haven't they? I mean, you've got to give everybody a chance to settle. I mean, you're saying William Loudon can't play in Europe?
No, I'm saying that...
Well, he's got a European Cup Winners' medal, for fuck's sake. You can't say he's not a good enough player to play in Europe.
Well,
that's fucking stupid, isn't it?
I had to persevere. And at that point, Archie Knox, brilliantly framed, comes up the tunnel.
Archie, come up here, this fucking interview. Listen, just fucking say the word interview.
And Archie says, tell me, stick his microphone.
I'd rather right up his fucking arse if it was me. Honestly, man.
You can't be fucking serious at that.
All right, that's what I was waiting for. I get that. I presume you want to start a bit again. The Rangers fans, what I'm trying to get at is the Rangers fans are demanding or hoping for...
Your questions to the chairman last week were fucking shite and all right. And this week's exactly the fucking same. If we had a bad night last night, you're having a fucking horrendous one now.
The interview would later become infamous after going viral on YouTube. It's now had millions of views.
The climax to this was about 3 years ago. We were out having a drink. He says to me, I wish I'd never effing well done that. I said, why, what's the problem? He says, well, the grandkids have found it. And his sweet granddaughter said to him, Grandpa, why are you swearing at that nice man? And I went, yes, revenge.
Walter's revamped squad continued to dominate the domestic game. And in 1997, they were on the verge of equalling Celtic's long-standing record of 9 league titles in a row. But Tommy Burns' men were not about to let the club's record go without a fight.
I was told, the first day I joined Rangers, I was told by Walter and I was told by all the guys in the dressing room about the Old Firm games against Celtic.
The fate of the season would pivot on one Old Firm derby. With their rivals dispatched, all that remained between Rangers and 9 in a row was 90 minutes at Tannadice.
It was clear to me what it meant, not only to the players, but when I met fans in the streets. It was much more than just winning a title or a trophy. It was history making. I put myself under pressure and try as well as I could as an individual player to be a success, try to move this team forward, get to the holy grail, which 9 in a row would be.
Miller's cross, a good one, that hits Laudrup! It's a classic from Laudrup!
pride of winning a title like that. But, you know, when on that day, it was all about relief.
To first and foremost equal our greatest rivals, I've achieved a fantastic run there of 9 championships in a row. You know, having been a Rangers supporter and kind of living through that, when you get the opportunity to equal it and obviously go on and try and better it, was something that I would never have thought would have been achieved. To be quite honest, I thought the competitive environment then would have been too great for it to happen, but it did happen, and we managed to get there. I think in a modern environment, in a competitive environment that you're involved in, is still a tremendous achievement for any club. I announced I was leaving Rangers in November, and obviously we went to the end of the season.
Walter could give no more. The mountain had been climbed.
Missing out on 10 was disappointing, there's no doubt about it. But if you're grateful of what we got.
Everything was up in the air at that point, and I think that shows you how important Walter was. This is the end of an era.
Walter left Ibrox in May 1998, and although his time there ended with league and cup defeats, he had assured his place in the club's history. It was only a month after leaving Rangers that the calls started coming in.
Walter had been approached by Sheffield Wednesday for an interview for their vacant manager's job. This was us, we were on our way. And at Carlisle, he got a phone call from the chairman of Everton offering us the job at Everton. So I said, well, if it was my choice, it would be Everton. He says, well, I'm along the same lines of that. I says, well, what can we do? I says, well, you need to phone them up. He says, no, we need to go down and face them. So we went for Carlisle down to Sheffield that night and met the board and told the board they were can't come, we'd accepted this offer from Everton. Now, it took a bit of guts that, you know, because it could quite easily have been done by a phone call, but Walter thought, no, I don't want to let that guy down. We'll go down and we'll meet him and tell him face to face.
Both have an outstanding track record, most recently at Glasgow Rangers. And I hope that they'll both feel at home in moving from one great blue club to another.
The Premiership at that time was as competitive as it has been at any time, you know, in terms of what they were doing. Everton hadn't had the best of circumstances over the last couple of years. Peter Johnson, who was chairman, had said to me that he was going to give it a last go, if you like. So we brought in some players that we felt we had to bring in, and we started well.
Walter called me to see if I was interested. I told him I was. And then it seemed to go really quickly from that, and I actually travelled down to Liverpool with Walter in the car. And it's always a bit intimidating when one of your heroes or, you know, a person you'd heard a lot about and admired, and then just to spend some time with them. But just, you know, as everybody says about Walter, really good company, really normal, and just enjoyed the chat on the way down, and he put me at ease in terms of what I was going to face. So I was really excited, as you can imagine, going down there to, you know, to be involved in the Premier League.
I remember the first time I met Walter. I was sitting in reception of a game, an away game, and Walter was there, and I didn't know he was going to become our manager because certain things weren't shared with Peter and the board. And I walked over and I said, hi, my name's Bill Kenwright. I'm on the board at Everton. And he said, hi, I'm Walter Smith, I'm your new manager.
It was an exciting time for an Everton fan and to be around the club at that time. It was great for him to come in. He made some very good signings for the club, but on limited budget. It was nice to see new players coming in, but Walter with his experience, and obviously your dad stories of Archie Knox as well. And your dad, obviously they play off each other and they were really good together. So to bring someone who had been successful into the club was a big thing for him.
Wayne Rooney was there, and we used to have him in training with us in the morning. Got an agreement from the school to maybe get 3 mornings off.
First of all, getting taken out to school, which I was always happy about, but to be getting taken out to school to then go and train with your heroes was massive. I went into the gym. It's a small gym. The training ground was really small, and there was always people round. Like Walter was in there, Archie Knox on the running machine. I remember going in one day and Walter was in there on his own, and just had about 30 minutes, the two of us, just talking. Walter was just giving me advice on what he thinks I can improve on, how I can improve. I remember just taking everything in and just thinking, this is crazy. I've almost had an audience with the manager of Everton Football Club to myself, which was, which for him to take that time out to speak to me at that age was something I'll never forget.
It had been a tough time for Everton. We were a club at best in transition. We weren't in meltdown, but, you know, in my lifetime as an Evertonian, I didn't really know relegation battles, and we'd had a few.
It was tough. I mean, I must admit, I found it very difficult, especially initially. Once I settled into it and I used to doing it, I realised, you know, that I had to change, and my expectation would always be, well, same as any other managers want to win every game that you go and play, you try and do that. But there has to be a realisation when you're in that division that you're not going to do that.
We were in a relegation battle, that wasn't any secret, that was clear to see from the table, and Walter obviously had hopes of building on that and staying in the league initially and then adding some players and developing the club, and that would have been why Walter went there.
It was a team that was just starting off. I had a couple of new players that went on to do really well, Marco Materazzi and Olivier Dacour had come in to play for us. We were doing okay, but then Peter Johnson found himself in a situation where he had a problem with the banks, and effectively the bank came in and took over the running of the club.
In his first season, Walter needed to steady the ship at Everton, but financial problems off the pitch were beyond his control. Just 4 months after taking charge, a situation arose with one of his best players.
Duncan Ferguson was the god of Evertonians. Wonderful, up-front striker. We were playing Newcastle United, funnily enough, in an evening game. The game had ended. And Walter had walked up the stairs and saw me and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Pardon?" He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Tell you what? About Duncan."
They were selling their players. And when you sell players with Duncan Ferguson, there's only one way you're going to go, and that's down the way. There's no question with that. You know, it's a hard job. And that was what we had, a really difficult job at the time, you know.
It just seemed to be in a constant state of flux. But I always felt, you know, in the dressing room, it was normal and it was well managed, and you know, Walter had that calm and authority that just, regardless of the chaos that was going on round about the club, and that sort of inner sanctum and stuff, it was always all about the football.
Walter was managing Everton during a troubled period, but despite the chaos, there were standout moments for the fans and the players.
That was my first Merseyside derby, and it was at Anfield, which is obviously a great place to go and play. It's, you know, I would argue, and it's not quite the Glasgow derby, you know, in terms of the passions associated with it, but it's very close.
Do you know the next morning all the players came into the training ground and he told them not to put the boots on. And he took them into the city centre and bought them breakfast so they could all enjoy the adulation of the fans.
Walter steadied the ship at Everton, but struggled to turn fortunes around. The team were frequently close to relegation, and eventually the patience of the fans and the board wore thin.
The results weren't going well. And maybe for the first time, we were thinking, oh, this could be a tight season. And we were at Middlesbrough on a cold day, I remember. He had to play people out of position. It was terrible. And he knew it was terrible, and I knew it was terrible. The fans were voicing their disapproval, and we had a board meeting at Middlesbrough. I phoned Walter on the way home. He said, Bill, I'll come down and see you. And he walked in that door, stood in the doorway, looked at me, and he said, Bill, you're going to have to tell me. I said, Walter, I can't say the words, but if we lose on Saturday, and you're sitting next to me, and he used to sit next to me at a lot of games, both of our hearts will break. And he didn't say a word. He got up, and he went outside, obviously, to the bathroom. Came back, stood at the door, said, Emma, put the kettle on. And in the doorway went, okay, who are we going to get to manage this great club of ours? And came and sat down. So I never said the words.
Walter Smith's paid the price of Everton's failure in the Premiership this season. He was sacked this morning after 3.5 years in charge.
He'd certainly left his mark, although he mightn't have been with trophies, but he left his mark on the football club and on the people, on the staff who worked there, certainly on the players who played under him. Everyone's got nothing but good words to say about him.
You've got to say, it wasn't a hugely successful time in Everton's history. I can't think of anything negative to say about him.
It wasn't the best of times to be there on a financial basis. As a club, they're a fantastic club. It was a great 4 years, and as I say, they have fantastic support. They're proper footballing people.
After 11 years as a top manager in Scotland and England, Walter took the opportunity to step away from the game and spend more time with his family. 2 years later, in 2004, a call for help came from an old friend in need.
Carlos Queiroz had left Manchester United to go to Real Madrid, and Sir Alec never replaced him at the time. He asked me if I would come and work for him to the end of the year.
I went through a period of saying, I'll survive, you know. But then when we got to December, I realised that, you know, in the run-in, I'm going to need help, you know, I'm going to need my assistant.
The request was far from random. The pair worked together in 1986, when Sir Alex, assisted by Walter, temporarily took charge of the national squad at the World Cup in Mexico.
For a young coach, or young assistant manager at the time, having 4 weeks working as closely with someone like Sir Alec was a fantastic experience for me, and one that I kind of cherish all through the rest of my career.
I phoned Walter and I says, "Are you busy, blah, blah, blah. I need to have a chat with you." So I drove up to Glasgow, met him in the hotel off at the Great Western Road, and I put it to him, and he says, "No question, love it." And it was terrific.
It was great. It was great to be involved. You see the differences in clubs, and going to Manchester United, they were obviously the biggest of them all.
He was brilliant with the players, and he refereed all the games. And Ronaldo was only a young lad, he was 18 years, he just joined us. And he was full of tricks and all that. The players were giving him a bit of stick, you know. And they kept fouling him, Neville and Keane, and, you know, they got wired into him and that. And he's like, "Foul, referee. Play on." And he kept doing that, honestly. And I'm going, "Christ, give him one." So I started walking out the road when I saw Ronaldo coming towards us. I walked out to the side of the road, and he says to me, "Do they have enough fouls in Scotland?" And Walter says, "No." And you knew he was going to be a great player, there was no question with that. But I think Walter gave him a certain path that helped him, you know, in terms of decision making. Should he beat a man, or should he pass the ball? Things like that. And I think it was a good lesson.
Walter's final match as Alex Ferguson's assistant took him all the way to the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff.
There are the two lads, Warner and Muscat. They make it first. Ronaldo! He can't. Van Nistelrooy scores, and it's 2-0 Manchester United. And a chance. Oh, it was easy for Van Nistelrooy.
It was curious for me to see Walter going back to being a number 2 again after all he'd achieved, but there you go, that's the humility of the man.
The 4 months gave me an opportunity to look at all other aspects of their club from their youths and all the way up, and it was fantastic to go there.
The experience with his old friend brought Walter back into management. In the same year, at the age of 56, the next chapter brought him face to face with one of the biggest challenges of his career.
It's almost hard to believe, but the final score in the Republican Stadium here in Chisinau is Moldova 1, Scotland 1.
Bertie Voets had come in. That was a big experiment for Scotland, bringing a manager from Germany. He was expected to bring German professionalism, and in the end what we got was a shambles.
I think we just lost our enjoyment, and we'd lost our kind of sense of purpose, and we'd lost our identity at the time. But we all genuinely gave it our best, but it was clear to see to me that it wasn't working.
Scotland had dropped to 77th in the FIFA rankings, and every game seemed to be a struggle. A new direction was required for the national team, and it called for a manager with a passion for Scottish football.
I wondered, having had slight experience of going with national teams before, I just wondered if I was maybe a little bit on the young side, although in my 50s. But I made up my mind that would be a good job to take.
I'm really looking forward to getting started. I have had experience with the FA and with the national teams from youth level to under-21s to assistant manager of the full national side, albeit 18 years ago. And I'm now looking forward to my own spell as team manager.
Straight away, Walter came in and it was about the squad. Try and get as settled a squad as possible to figure out who wants to be there, who wants to be part of it, who's going to buy in.
We met in a hotel in Manchester, so everybody just goes down there. We have 2 or 3 days training. Again, it would have been a bit of bonding, a bit of a laugh, a bit of getting to know the gaffer, getting to know his staff, again, getting the boys together. And it was a brilliant 3 days, really was. Everybody respected him. Everybody knew he had his presence, he had his aura. That's something you've got. It's not something that you can have with one guy. It's just that he just had it. So there was an immediate response for the group.
When I look back, it was about Walter changing the feeling within the camp that we had to be together and we had to get to know each other, which he done brilliantly.
It felt like a natural sort of fit. Scotland needed somebody to kind of galvanise and bring it back together. And I thought, first and foremost, as a fan, I'm thinking that's, that really sounds good, it sounds right. And then you look at who he brought in with him and you can see the logic associated with that.
The change in mood relied much on Walter's hand-picked coaching team, which included a former Rangers player and an old rival, Tommy Burns.
Tommy was always somebody I admired, from afar, albeit, Rangers and Celtic, we were the bitterest of rivals. He always, to me, set his team out really well. He played in a manner that Tommy Burns played in, where we're always attacking and always going forward, whereas I feel I'm probably a little bit more pragmatic than that, and I thought that would be a good mix. And Ali McCoist, he was, when I went and asked him, he was delighted to come as coach and Tommy as assistant manager. So it was great, the setup was there.
People just assumed that because my dad was Celtic and Walter and Ali were Rangers, there couldn't be any way they could work together, not understanding where they came from, those school football backgrounds, and the kind of men they were. And it was understanding that it's just a game. You don't take it home with you. It's how you live your life off the pitch, as well as how you are on the pitch. So they were both very similar in that way. Old school.
There were 2 guys from working class areas of Glasgow who were basically the same blokes.
We just had to go in and we knew that we had to try and lift the team's fortunes a little bit.
Turning fortunes around wouldn't happen overnight. Scotland failed to qualify for the 2006 World Cup, but the team were starting to win again, and a 3-0 victory away to Slovenia demonstrated the impact of Walter's influence.
We showed an improvement in terms of performance and could therefore, look forward to going into our next campaign.
Under Smith's management, Scotland seemed to improve with each game, and in May 2006, an invitation to play in Japan's annual Kirin Cup tournament restored some much-needed national pride.
It was a milestone in terms of that group actually being successful at something and winning a trophy, although it's not the trophy ultimately you go into your Scotland career hoping to win. It's definitely a start, and it felt like that. It felt like it was progression.
But perhaps Walter's greatest moment as national manager came when Scotland hosted the World Cup finalists France in a Euro 2008 qualifier.
Of course, Scotland were playing against France, and remember, France were a world power at the time. It was not expected that Scotland would beat them. These were real scalps to have taken, and that was probably Scotland's peak under Walter Smith.
I got a terrific reaction from all the players, and we did extremely well in that aspect of it.
By October 2006, he had been in charge for just over 2 years, winning 7 matches from 16, and Scotland had climbed 52 places in the FIFA rankings. But then, out of the blue, Walter received an offer he couldn't refuse.
He's back in a blaze of publicity and a blaze of controversy.
Leads the national team without a boss.
Walter Smith has been confirmed as the new manager of Glasgow Rangers.
Well, I'd had a party up at my house, and Walter and I had gone down to a small lounge downstairs, and I said, would you ever think about coming back? So probably we had a pre-discussion about it. I phoned Walter, and he became the manager of Rangers again.
I thought it was the right thing for me at the time. If it had been Anywhere else, I would have said no, but going back to Rangers again obviously had a massive pull for me, and going back into an environment where, you know, you could go and win again.
In his first full season back at Ibrox, with some fresh talent in the squad, Rangers won a cup double and went on an incredible run in the UEFA Cup.
Try and make our team more difficult to beat in European games was something that I started out doing, and I must say I was surprised at how well we did it.
And it kind of snowballed to the degree where, you know, we're going to Florence in that game thinking we're one game away for a final. It kind of crept up on us, to be honest.
Now Rangers get to the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup and they're playing the second leg in Italy against Fiorentina, who are a great name in European football.
It goes to a penalty shootout.
Sebastian Frey against Barry Ferguson, the Rangers captain. On to save.
And at this point, Rangers fans are hoping but not entirely believing, because Fiorentina, they are from Serie A, they're the Italians, they're masters of the game, the masters of technique. Surely they will win the penalty decider.
Now Christian Pieri, the veteran. Oh, he's put it over!
They can't quite find the mark the way they want to. Nacho Novo steps up for Rangers' fourth penalty kick, knowing that if he converts this, Rangers are in the UEFA Cup final.
Here he comes. He's done it! Rangers go to Manchester! The 10-man have done
it! The final against Zenit St. Petersburg took place in Manchester. Zenit were managed by Dick Advocaat, who succeeded Walter at Rangers in 1998. It was billed as the Battle of the Rangers managers.
Zenit St. Petersburg were a good side. They had a lot of good players in their team. They were good, and probably on an individual basis better equipped to play a final than the Rangers were.
It's all over.
It was a tremendous run to get there. I never thought that the team, considering it was their first year together, would have the capability of doing that, and they deserve tremendous credit for the work they put in over that season.
And the final twist, and the game's cruel sometimes. In Manchester that night, we woke up the next morning to the news that Tommy Burns had passed away.
I count myself fortunate now that I got the opportunity to work with him for the length of time that I did. He's a fantastic man. He was great.
My dad died, and Mum, it was her that decided she wanted Walter and Ali to carry the coffin. They said, yeah, it wasn't for anything other than the special friendship they had. You know, there's that kind of divide that everyone talks about, which is so prevalent in Glasgow. And there is only a handful of people that fall into that category of, you know, bridging the divide, Walter definitely being one of them. From our point of view, it was just my dad's friends carrying his coffin, but for the rest of Glasgow, that was a symbol of this bridge, and it's really special.
Walter Smith's final match as manager ended in a 5-1 victory away to Kilmarnock. clinching the league championship title on the last day of the season. It was his 10th title and his 21st domestic trophy for Rangers. This record puts Walter Smith among the most successful managers in the history of Scottish football.
Walter carried his fantastic talents a long time. And if anybody wants to follow that path, they should pay attention to the life he had.
He was a good, decent human being that done his job and done it really, really well, and it was nice to have they met.
When you think what Walter achieved in the game on his own, I think that was a remarkable thing to do.
He loved his wife, loved his boys, loved his players.
After he died, I was waking up in the middle of the night, every night for weeks, thinking about him. You know that?
He was my mate.
Walter, is football only a game?
Yes, it is only a game. It's a great game. It's a game I've been very fortunate to be involved in for most of my adult life. That normally doesn't happen if you go on and you're lucky enough to play at a professional level. Then it's fantastic doing that. To have stretched that into my 60s was something that I would never have thought of at the start. When I was a boy in Carmel, you could never see yourself, getting to where I've managed to get in a football sense. So I look at football, it's given me a great deal. It's given my family a great deal. I've loved it. And for me, it's more than a game, it's a passion.